According to my research on what I have looked up and the people that I spoke with in First Circle Recovery, the rehab unit or the recovery unit, aren't there grants that are available for body cams? Isn't there also a finance program over a 5-year period to where it won't cost as much? There's also programs that give free body cams if you pay the storage cost on those, which is supposed to be less than the actual cost of buying the materials. And then the second part of that is that wouldn't it save money in the budget if things like the grant that was offered by Stephanie Almeida to fund the Narcan for Macon County, if that was utilized, then couldn't all of those monies that was spent on the Narcan then be put to other areas of use, like even officers for Nantahala? Like, couldn't that have been put somewhere else? You know, if you're going to get a free service offered to you in training, why not utilize that to where it frees up more of the budget to help in other areas?
I've seen some of the things that, and I've heard you say this before on social media, and the reality of it is there's certain laws that govern what I can do. And what the county commissioners will tell you is that just because another county does it one way, doesn't always mean it's legal, doesn't always mean it's right. And one of the things that we can't do, we've actually submitted funding or submitted applications and submitted opportunities for us to get exactly what you were just talking about. And we were turned down here locally because the county attorney and the county finance officer says the county commissioners are only funding my budget from July 1 to June 30th. And so we can't go into a contract for a 5-year plan because they don't guarantee that we get that money next year. It's year to year.
Well, what about the Narcan that would have been given for free?
And so the other thing too is, and I can't, I'm losing her mind, what's Smoky Mountain?
We furnished all the Narcan, there's no charge for the Narcan.
We were able to go through.
I'm on the value board, have been for many, many years.
We were able to go through that organization.
There's
But
no
I've
charge
seen
for the
posts that
Narcan.
have said that you requested funding for the Narcan, so I'm confused on that. I'm not trying to argue it, I'm just saying this is what I've seen. So and I've personally talked with Stephanie Almeida, who said that she contacted you personally, and this isn't an attack towards you. This is wondering whether the budget's being spent correctly or not, because there are needs in this community. There are needs in Macon County, and the people are getting discouraged and they're getting upset that they don't feel like the law is being upheld and like they have the protection of the law. I don't even live in this community, and I've heard the hearts of the people here who feel like they're not being protected. And no one should have that. You know, especially if, you know, that was offered to you. I can go in personally myself and go down to Stephanie's office, go through less than a 5-minute training, and have free Narcan given to me to keep in my vehicle in case if I need it to save someone's life.
I can call tomorrow and get more free Narcan. I don't have to.
Then why was money spent on it? That's my question.
That was our initial, because I make a decision in an $8 million budget, or almost $8 million budget, of different things I buy or spend money on. And every single dime that I spend goes through our finance director.
So would the finance director not have approved you gotten it for free instead of having to spend money on it?
I did get a bunch for free.
Okay, but you also spent money on some of it as well. I mean, that's in the documentation.
Yeah.
So unless that documentation is incorrect, then money was spent on that when it could have been put towards what I hear these people crying that they need. So that's, I mean, I don't want to argue anymore. I'm just saying
I'm
that
not arguing,
it's.
ma'am. You're the one that's doing all the talking here. I've not got to say much, but the fact of the matter is, do you know how much I spent?
Well,
No.
that dollar amount wasn't put out there, but I know how much you could have gotten for free. How much the grant was.
It was less than $2,000 is what we actually spent. And for the 4 officers, it's nearly $400,000. So we're only talking a couple of $1,000s. And that was to get us started. And I mean, I made that decision. The people elected me as sheriff to be very careful with watch over the monies and be fiscally responsible. I think I've done an excellent job of that. All these men here have been county commissioners. They've been a part of seeing my budget. I think one of the things that I do above everybody else in our county is I'm very, very meticulous about the information that I put to those commissioners, so they know exactly the funds that I'm spending, and they have approved that. And it's a very small amount, less than $2,000, I guess, out of the almost $8 million budget is nothing. But the important part is I didn't have to apply for a grant and go through Stephanie. I was able to make a phone call and get this in place because of what the purpose was for.
Okay, so in the future, then, we wouldn't have to be concerned about monies in the budget being spent towards that, because you're gonna have an open avenue to get those.
That
It
is
has
correct.
been, ever since.
It has been. Availability was another issue.
As soon, and the other thing too is the type that she was utilizing and the type that we were told that we had access to. We wanted a different type. In our opinion.
So what type are you guys using?
I forget exactly what it's called, but, I mean, I can't remember. I don't even have one with me here, but I just can't remember the style. There's several different.
It's the nasal.
No.
Well, that's what this is, the
expensive.
naloxone, the Narcan, that's the nasal spray, is administered.
Thank you.
So, I mean, anyone else may not agree with me, but I think even 2,000 spent in an area that didn't need to be spent is too much.
Thank you for your opinion. I appreciate it.
How much of that Narcan do you have to use, you know, to save a life? How
I think-
often do you have to use it?
It all depends.
There you go.
It depends upon the patient. You know, the first time you use it to reverse the opioid overdose, you don't use as big a dose as you do the second time. It becomes more and more ineffective, the
Right.
number of times it's used on the single individual. And so it just, you can't put an amount, it
So if
depends.
somebody needs it over and over, it'll get to the point where none of it will work? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it would be highly ineffective. I wouldn't say it wouldn't work at all, but it'd be highly ineffective.
You mean in different times, like if you used it on somebody today and the same person overdosed a week from now and you had to do it again
Right.
on? Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
To be honest, that's a medical question. I have no idea. I don't think they get an immune system to it.
Oh.
I don't think it really matters. But as far as price, if any of your children, God forbid, were ever to become addicts, and there may be somebody in here who's had an addict in your family, if any of your children, if that offs me spending that $2,000 or whatever amount it was, I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what, to be honest with you, I don't care if it's 5,000. If that was your child, that my officer saved their life because they've become an addict, it's worth every bit of that $5,000 to you all. And I feel the same way.
Well, I didn't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I know
I was
you
just curious about how much you had to use.
EMS uses much more than the sheriff's department, and if Warner or some of the people from EMS was here,
I just
that's,
wondered how many overdoses there was in the county.
If I
You
can
know,
answer,
that's what I was wondering.
If I can help you out a little bit without getting teary-eyed, because I just had this happen to a cousin of mine down in Georgia. He wasn't in Macon County, but down in Georgia. His mom and dad found him, and he had OD'd, drugs everywhere, stuff coming out of his mouth. Well, they called 911. The EMTs did administrative, but because there was just so much going on with him, that pen didn't help him. The girl that was in the car with him had took off to the woods, same thing, messed up, high on drugs. She ended up stealing the car and came back that way and seen all the law. Ended up, because she was so messed up, she was seeing things. The lights was playing tricks on her. Ended up hitting them head on. Ended up killing 3 people that night. We had to bury him and his girlfriend. But the pen itself did not help save his life. Now, would it have saved hers because she did take off and run and steal a car? If she had remained there in that, at that point, at that position, would that have pen saved her? I'm hoping it would have. But like he said, I don't necessarily believe that these pens is going to spare everybody if they're so far that where they're already spitting stuff out of their mouth and their nose. They may be too far gone.
There was a case recently, somebody was transported from Nantahala after they'd been arrested and brought back to the jail, and she basically went out in the back of the car, and they had to use that on her.
Will it
It
work
does
on-
save lives.
Will Narcan work on both meth and heroin overdoses?
Just opioids.
It's opioid.